Hello, everyone. Today we're going to be talking about World War II, and it's called World War II because it is the second large world war in the 20th century. We already talked about World War I in this class. However, after World War I, they created the Treaty of Versailles. They tried to punish Germany, but it didn't go over well. Germany came back into power, and there was another world war with a lot of the same exact countries. And World War II began when Germany, led by Hitler, invaded Poland in 1939, and it was followed by the Soviet Union's invasion of Poland and the Baltic countries from the east. So Germany invaded Poland, and then the Soviet Union, which was with Germany at the time, they were partners, they invaded Poland from the east. And this is very similar to World War I because during the first 2 years of the war, the United States officially stayed neutral. The United States didn't want to fight. So just like when World War I started, the U.S. was neutral. Same thing in World War II. World War II started in Europe and the U.S. didn't fight. They remained neutral. This is the time when the U.S. is just getting out of the Great Depression. They just fought in World War I, so they don't want to fight. And what's going on in Europe right now is Germany defeated France and pounded Britain from the air in the Battle of Britain. And that is when Germany used planes to continuously bomb Britain. And in the mid 1940s, Hitler turned on his former partner and invaded the Soviet Union. So if we just go back to this real quick. So Hitler, who was the leader of Germany, they used to be friends with the Soviet Union, but Hitler turned and he ended up invading the Soviet Union, who was supposed to be his partner. So despite strong isolationists, which means not wanting to fight, feelings at home, the U.S. increasingly helped Britain by providing war supplies and old naval warships in return for military bases in Bermuda and the Caribbean. So the United States wanted military bases in these areas, and they helped Britain, which is England, by giving them war supplies. And eventually, the Lend-Lease Act was passed, and it gave the president authority to sell or lend equipment and weapons to countries to defend themselves against the Axis powers. So he's against the Axis powers, which is Germany, and they begin selling weapons. So they're not fighting in the war yet, but they are helping the Allies. They're giving them weapons and they're helping them. And he called it lending a garden hose to a next door neighbor whose house is on fire. So he's saying if your neighbor's house is on fire, you should probably give them a garden hose and try to help get the water out. And this is the Lend-Lease Act. It shows the U.S. gave $11.1 billion. And a lot of it, some of it was agricultural, like farming, industrial items to build stuff, ammunitions, weapons. So it was a lot of things they gave. And while the war in Europe's going on, there's also a war in Asia going on. And during the 1930s, a militaristic Japan invaded and brutalized Manchuria and China as it attempted to military and economic domination over Asia. So it wanted complete control over Asia, and they were brutal, which means they were very bad. They killed a lot of Manchurians. They did a lot of very bad things to Manchurians and Chinese. And the U.S. refused to recognize Japanese conquests in Asia and imposed an embargo on exports of oil and steel to Japan. An embargo is when you don't give or sell a country certain items. So the United States, we didn't agree that Japan was invading China, Manchuria, and other countries in Asia. So we stopped selling them oil and steel. And these two things are very important, and the U.S. has a bunch of them. But we said, we don't agree with you, so we're not going to give you oil and steel anymore. And while negotiating with the United States over the embargo, and without warning, Japan carried out an air attack on the American naval base at Pearl Harbor, Hawaii, on December 7th, 1941. So Japan got a bunch of planes and they bombed Japan. They bombed Hawaii. So Japan attacked Hawaii on December 7th, 1941. And the attack destroyed much of the American Pacific Fleet and killed several thousand Americans. Roosevelt called this a day that will live in infamy, and he asked Congress to declare war on Japan. And Congress declared war on Japan on December 8th, 1941. So this is when the United States finally goes to war. And it all started because Japan bombed Pearl Harbor in Hawaii on December 7th. And the very next day, the United States Congress declared war on Japan. And Roosevelt called it a day that will live in infamy. And infamy is where you are famous, but for a bad reason. For example, someone like El Chapo, he's famous, but it's for a bad reason because he sold drugs and killed lots of people. So this day, when Japan bombed Pearl Harbor, December 7th, Roosevelt called it a day that will live in infamy because it's famous, but it's for a bad reason because we were attacked that day. And this is a picture of the boats that were destroyed. There was more damage done as well. And this is in Pearl Harbor. And after Pearl Harbor, Hitler honored a pact, an agreement with Japan, and declared war on the United States. So debates over isolationism ended, and World War II was officially a world war. So the United States is no longer practicing isolationism, being by themselves. They officially joined the war. And in World War II, there's the Axis powers and the Allied powers. The Axis powers were Germany, Italy, and Japan. And it was the Soviet Union at the beginning of the war. And then there's the Allied powers, which is the United States, Britain, China, France, and Australia. And then Soviet Union later in the war. And there was also other countries that fought. But these are the biggest countries and the main countries that fought in World War II and had the most influence. If you guys have any questions, let me know.